So we're up to Oishid days over here. The Rebbe explained that two things. First of all, the hamshocha that takes place through the avodah of the hiskafia brings down a higher gilui oir, and through the avodah of his hapcha, you turn it the tzimtzum to oir. So that's why you make it into a keli. So we have to, first of all, bring down an oir which is not in the nature of the oir. That is, comes down when a person practices iskafia, which he goes against his nature. So that brings down the oir, which is against, so to speak, Hashem's nature, brings down a higher oir. But what about the Makablim? What about the Kalim? What about the world? How are they going to receive that higher oir? So for that, we have Ishapcha. Ishapcha turns the Tzimtzum around, and it makes the Kalim fit to receive a higher Gilum. So now the Rebbe is going to explain the Lashonis in the Maimer of the Hemshech, in the Maimer of Basi Lagani, in which the Rebbe uses both Lashonis, Iskafia and Ishapcha. And but in the Maimer of the Zohar, Kad Iskafia only talks about Iskafia. The Rebbe is going to explain. Use base. Based on this, we can explain Mashakosu Bahamaimer. What it says in the Maimer, Shasiyas Adire Betachtoinim, Yaldei Iskafia V'Ishapcha. So he says both through Iskafia and Ishapcha. But he brings down the Zohar Kimaimer Kad Iskafia Sitra Achro Istalik Ikore de Kuchebrichu Bekulon. There it says when the Sitra Achros is Iskafia, that's when you get the Ikore de Bekula Al. So we see the Rebbe says Iskafia V'Ishapcha. But in the Maimer HaZoyar, the Maimer HaZoyar Shemevi, but in the saying of the Zoyar that he brings down, Ne'amar, over there it just says Kad Iskafia Sitra Achra, only talks about Iskafia. Ubaha Maimer Oimer Iskafia V'Ishapcha, but the Maimer says both Iskafia and Ishapcha. The Rebbe is going to explain based on what he said before. Take, the idea of Iskafia, that brings down the higher oil. But Ishapcha brings down that it should come mitzad the Nivroim themselves, so that they should be the proper Kalim. So we can say the explanation in there, the Memaimer HaZoyar, Medaber b'hamshochas hagilu d'lamaylo. In the saying of the Zoyar, he talks about how we bring down this gilui of above. Over there, it's mainly talking about how we're bringing down a higher light, and that is through Skafia, because the Zohar talks about Istalik Yikore de Kuchebrichu B'chulo Omer, that the preciousness of Yikore de Kuchebrichu, the light of Istalik comes in all worlds, which is Hamshochas Eir HaSevim, which is drawing down the Eir HaSevim. And that part, Takeh, B'zen Nase, Adidei Iskafia. That is accomplished through Iskafia. Aldei Shaha Odom Oise Neged Tivor Tzoynek. And also, if you, through a person doing against his nature and his will, as we said before in Sif Yud, that's the way to bring down the higher Gilui Oir. Okay? That's what the Zohar talks about. But the second part, in order for it to be a dwelling place in the lower world, the inyan dire betachtoinim, what does it mean? Dire betachtoinim is that the gilui that comes down to the tachtoinim, should be also from the perspective and the matters of the tachtoinim, that they should be a dira. They from themselves, not you push something down from on top into them. That's Iskafia does that. But how do they become a gilui? Shiyu kelim lozeh canal sibes, as we said earlier in sibes. So for this we have both. We have Iskafia and Ishapcha. Iskafia brings down the light, and Ishapcha makes the dira betachtoinim mitzad the tachtoinim. The Rebbe is going to explain. So now we're saying that the Maimer Hazayah talks about Kadis Kafia, it talks about Iskafia, he's talking about Dam Shochasoy. And later on, we have also the Ilis Habcha, which is Bedir B'Tachtoin. But the Rebbe says in the Maimer, when it talks about Ishabcha, it seems to imply that the Ishabcha brings a Maila, there's a greater light because of Ishabcha. Here we're saying the greater light comes mitzad Iskafia. Ishabcha accomplishes that it should be Adir B'Tachtoinim, but in the Maimer it seems to explain that also the greater oil comes mitzad Ishabcha. Look inside. So we need to understand the Mavur Maimer B'Inyan his Maila the Iskafia. In the Maimer he explains the Maila of his Hapcha over there. The Maimer says Hapcha. So why is this Hapcha Maila? So it says Sheyisrein Ha'oir Min HaChoshech Davke. Why is this Hapcha? Because the advantage of light when it comes from darkness. So his Hapcha, first it's dark, and then you turn it around, and then you have a greater light. Yisrein Ha'oir is Min HaChoshech Davke. Dal Yidei Sha'achoshech Nepach La'oir Nase Yisrein Ha'oir. Through the darkness being turned to light, that becomes an advantage in what? In the oir. So the discussion over here is not a discussion that the kelim become greater, that the mekablim is a dir betachtoinim mitzad tachtoinim. Over here we're saying through his hapcha we get a higher oir. The mizem move on. From this we understand Shahamayla, the Ishapcha, the advantage of Ishapcha. It is not only as it touches, as it's important to the Tach. Shaidei Havoida, the Ishapcha Nase Keli, that through the Avoida Ishapcha becomes a Keli. Eloshal Yidei Ishapcha Nase Gam Yisrein Beham Shocha. But through his Habcha, there is also an advantage in the Hamshacha Yisrein Ha'oir. There's a greater light. How could we explain that his Habcha makes only the Dira B'Tachtoinim? In the Maimer, it's explained that we get a greater oir through his Habcha. So his Habcha impacts it also. But that, how do we explain that with the Zohar statement? B'Maimer HaZohar Shemevi, but in the Zohar, it doesn't talk about his Hapcha. Over there, it says Kadis Kafia Sitra Achra. When you subdue the Sitra Achra, you get the higher. Not when it doesn't say there is Hapcha, just says this Kafia. The Rebbe tried to explain before that yes, the Zohar is talking about Kadis Kafia because this Kafia brings down a greater oir. That's what the Zohar is talking about. And the fact that you need this hapcha, that just helps the tachtoinim for them. But the Rebbe says in the explanation of the Maimer, he says that through his hapcha you get a greater oir. So why in the Zohar statement it only talks about his kafia? The Yeshloim Rebbe explained the hamshocha shal yidei is kafia higili. The what's drawn down, what comes down through his kafia, is a level of gilui. It's a level of revealed. Elo shahagilui hulamailo mishaychus loilomis. But it's a gilui which is higher than having a connection to the world. How does this happen? As the Rebbe is summarizing what we learned before. Through a person doing against his nature. So then you bring down hamshachas hagilui, so then the gilui is being drawn down like not like its nature. The nature of the oil, which is higher than oilamais, is not to come down to be nimshach, but because the yid worked connected tivoi, the gilu is also the gam ha'oir so the ma'ila b'shaychus la'oilamis. It's also a light which is higher than having a connection to oilamis. It's the light of istalik. It's the removed light. It's a light which is istalik. Nimshach begilu b'oilam comes down begilu b'oilam. So that is accomplished through iskafia. But the avoid is hapcha magaz b'mokim shalamaylo megilui. That reaches a place which is even higher of revelation. It's not that it's an oir that is higher than the world. It's bechlal higher than revelation. Why are we saying that? Is the fact that the darkness turns to light, saying that the place which was choshech, the tachtonim themselves that turned to oir, that is because of atzmus she'oir v'choshech shovin legabe, which light and darkness are equal. That's the place where you reach his hapcha, the gam. So first of all is because that's a place that can turn around the and it can turn it around. He said the both things before also. The gam lifish is hapcha nasa tachten klikinau. Also through his hapcha, the tachten becomes a vessel. So now he can get the oil, which the atzmus, which is higher. Shahidezeh nishlames hakavona didire betachtoina takavonas atzmus. Because through this, that you have the choshech turn to oil, this fulfills the intent of didire betachtoinim, which was in the intent of the Atzmus. So that means that Atzmus comes down over here. So now, since you bring down the level of Atzmus Shahad and Gilui, Nasi Yisrael, Gam Ba'oir V'Hagilui, Shenim Shech Mishom, so that also brings about an advantage even also in the light and the revelation that comes from there. So now we need both inyonim. So we actually, through his hapcha, we get a higher oir, but we get a different oir. We get atzmos. So that's why we need both of them. You need iskafia v'ishabcha. Kibetchila tzorich liyis hamshachas hagiluyim al yidei iskafia. First, you need to bring down the giluyim through iskafia. V'yidei ishabcha shel achre iskafia. Through ishabcha, which follows iskafia. Nase hatachten klil hagilui. So that brings about that the tachten becomes a vessel for the gilui, but nase yisra gam behagilui, and this makes an advantage of the gilui sham shochosu imemokim shalamayla megilui, that you bring down from a place which is higher than gilui. So the Zohar, when it says Kadis Kafir Sidra Achra, is talking about when you do Iskafia, you bring down an oir beyond the nature of the oir, which is an oir which is higher than Shaykhas Loilamis. But when we practice Ishapcha after Iskafia, then we bring down Atzmo. So it turns out that there is an advantage also in the Gilui. First of all, there needs to be the Gilui. The Sabcha makes the Tachta for a Keli for that Gilui, for the Gilui which is higher than Elamis, and on top of making it the Dira Betachtoini, making it for a Keli, it also mamshir the higher oir. But that's not what the Zohar talks about. The Zohar talks about just that higher Gilui. So these two ideas the Rebbe is going to bring down now. The Rebbe is going back, he's going to circle back to what he started off, that the light, even though Iker Shechina betachtoinim hoiso, so in the beginning there was the Shechina in the world, but the fact that it left it, and now we're bringing it back on a much higher level than before, because now we bring it back through the avodah of Iskafia and Ishapcha. And the Rebbe is going to bring down, because it's mainly like about Tshuva, that these madreges, the advantages, is mainly about Tshuva. You give them. These two ideas of Iskafia and Ishapcha, and the way they bring down the Gilui and they bring down Atzmus, they're mainly by about Tshuva, which the world is like about Tshuva after we brought down the oil again, because it was nostalgic and then it's come down again. Why by about Tshuva? In addition to the fact that about Tshuva reads and studies more than his nature and what he was accustomed to, Kemuv Alil Sif Yud Midrushia Admur Maharash, as brought down before from the Maimorim of the Rebbe Maharash, is that's one thing. Is Habalid Shuva Koiv Shimes Yitzrom Yitzer Mitzadikim. The Balid Shuva, they have to conquer their Yitzer more than Tzadikim. So therefore, the main Iskafia is by Abal Shuva. While derech zeh hu beha avodah d'ishapcha, the main avodah d'ishapcha is by Abal Shuva. Ki iker hamayla d'ishapcha chashoicha l'nehayro, because the main advantage to turn darkness to light is when darkness itself turns itself around, not like somebody turns you around. When the turning the darkness to light, it's not because there is light there. But rather the darkness on its own turns to light. Tshuva mainly is the darkness gets turned to light. The Betzadikim, because when we talk about tzadikim, gam ha'avodah di sabcho shalahem, also their avodah of, what is the avodah of ishapcha of tzadikim? He al yidei shemargishim elakus, that is through they sense godliness, which is a gilu milmailo. But v'ho yishapcha de bal tshuva, but the turnaround about Shuvah, Shemishtan, Nevin Nepach Min, Hakotze El Hakotze, that he turns around and changes himself around from one extreme to the other extreme. That comes from him itself, not from above. So mainly Iskafia and Ishapcha are mainly by Abal Tshuva. First of all, Iskafia Abal Tshuva has to conquer more, has to fight more than a tzaddik. And second of all, the Ishapcha, by a tzaddik, it comes mitzad giluyim, the giluyoyer. By a Baal Tshuva, it comes from the darkness itself. And that's the advantage of Chashoichel Nahira when it comes to the darkness itself. Yesh Leimar, we can say the Inyan Zeh, Berubas B'Teres Abal Shem Tov, Ala Posik, this idea that it is these two levels by a Baal Tshuva is hinted in the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, Ala Posik Vayer by Beker Kemer, Shuvalil Siv Zayin, the Posik Vayer Beker that was brought down before in Siv Zayin. So the Vayer Shom over there he explains. He brings down that the Eibush that created Erev Aboiker Erev is Rishoyim and Boiker is Tzadikim. We don't know which one Hashem wants. So it brings down the Pasuk Masha Obar David HaMelech. David HaMelech said, V'shavti d'rochoi v'oshiva ragloi el eidoi secha. I considered my ways, my path, but I returned my feet back to your testimony, to the Torah. What does it mean? Chashavti d'rochoi, I considered my path. Chashavti d'rochoi hu shedavid hoyechoshev b'drochov hagashmi. Chashavti, I considered my path, meaning that he was considering his physical path. As explained the reason for this. But what did he conclude? I returned Shuva Raglai, meaning I turned to train myself. Ragli Miloshin Hergel. Ragli is not my feet, but Ragli is my custom, my nature, my what I'm used to. I turned Elei Desecho. I turned to the testimony, to my habit to go back to the Eibishter's Torah. Yesh Leimar, the Inyone Shel David. What is David? Hu shehekim oilo shel tshuva. He raised the yoke of tshuva, meaning through David HaMelech, having remorse and regret about his sin with Bathsheba. So the Gemara says that he set up and he raised the oil shel tshuva that a person can do teshuva at such a level, like David HaMelech. So David HaMelech, we look at him as a Baal Tshuva. So Ubetoira Hanal the Baal Shem Tov, in this teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, brings down Eni Yedei Be'ezim Em Chofetz, and the Pasuk Ashuva Raglei is Meramesh De Hamaylis Shebe Baal Tshuva. The two advantages about Shuva. Ashuva lahargil, I will return back to get myself trained. Shinu harigilus, that's iskafia. That's the level of iskafia that we're talking about. We don't know which one you want. That talks about the inyan abchida ba'avoda b'koyach atzmai. That talks about to, on your own, to choose is hapcha. And as the Rebbe said, this is mainly by a Baal Tshuva more than a tzaddik. So these two avodas of iskafia and ishapcha are hinted within the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, which first talks about Ein Yidei Be'ezim Am Chofetz, which is the part of the Bechira and the Koich Atzmai, and then Ashuva Lahargi, which is the end of iskafia. Now we circle around to explain the Maimer, what happens of the Ika Shechina B'Tachton. Zehu Shamshochas Ika Shechina Lamato La'achar Asiluk, that bringing down the Shechina Lamata after it was removed, He nihilis yoiser, it's on a higher level, than it was in the beginning of creation. Because when we bring down after it was removed, which took place through the sin of the Eitzadas and the sins that follow, he dugmas inyan hatshuva. That's similar to the idea of tshuva. So we did tshuva to bring the Shechina back down to the world. It was taken away and bring it back. That's tshuva. The advantage that takes place in the hamshocha, which is after the removal, is in the two aspects. It's both a greater hamshocha, and it's more bepnimis in the tachtonim. Kinal sif sivhei b'shnei inyon in both matters. Hein b'hamshochas hagilu de lamailo, both in bringing down the revelation of above. Ki hamshochas hagilu achshov hu al yidei avodah diskafi v'izhabcha. Because how we're bringing it down now, it's iskafi v'izhabcha. In the beginning, it was Iker Shechina B'tachtonim Ha'isa was Mitzad Hashem. But now we have to work for it. It comes down through Iskafi V'Yishabcha. So that's the Gilui L'maylo. We get a higher Gilui because we're bringing it down through Iskafi and V'Yishabcha. But also, V'hein B'negei L'Hatachtonim. But also as far as it comes down into the lower, into the penetrate, Ki Avoida Achshov, He avoida b'koyach atzmo, because the work now is a work that is with his own power. Al yidei hatzimtzum nischadesh inyan ha'avoida b'koyach atzmo u'be'iker la'achrei chet eitzadas. This, that tzimtzum made up this whole avodah, that you do it with your own koyach, which is the whole idea of ishabcha b'koyach atzmai u'beiker la'achrei chet eitzadas. Because after the chet eitzadas, we lost the level of giluyim milmayla. We're not impressed so much above it. It has to come from within. When you work with yourself, that is similar to the inyan for ishapcha, ubefrat al yidei ha'avoida d'ishapcha mamish. Not only because you do it b'koyach atzmai, but especially when you taka turn around, nasa oilam keli la'gilui, the world becomes a keli la'gilui. So the Rebbe explains that now in both areas there is a much more elevated level. First of all, it's a much higher level of amshocha because it comes through iskafia and ishapcha, and also as far as the tachtonim itself, that now because it was after the chet eitzadas and all this is talkus, and certainly if you actually ishapcha, we become a keli, the world becomes a keli to the Gil. Yudala. And through our action, our service. So there's two things, Maseinu and then Avedasenu. Maseinu is just the action, Torah mitzvahs, without having to struggle, not diskafi. The Maseinu ki ma Torah mitzvahs kifi atava. Maseinu is the observance of Torah mitzvahs according to nature. Avedasenu ya'igia b'Torah mitzvahs neged atava. And Avedasenu, that's the effort in terms against the diskafia. And the Rebbe said, "V'yeshloimar sheb'maseinu nichlal gam." That in maseinu, it also includes sha'idei hayigia nasezeh hateva shelo yizhapcha. That through the effort it becomes his action, that becomes his nature. He's hapcha, so he doesn't have to work its action because he's already accomplished to change himself. It's not avodah. So Masenu includes nature and also that which has become his nature through turning himself over. Ubefrat, but Avodah is the avodah of against what you want to do. You force yourself. Befrat Bisman goes, especially during the time of exile. Then we fix the descent that took place through the Chetzadas. Until we feel that the descent that we missed out and we didn't have the Shekhinah, it's for the elevation. Similarly, is also the other sins, all sins, that evolved, started from the Chet Eitzadas, and then we did the other sins. They had Tshuva, so through the Tshuva, they turn around and become merits. The Rebbe says, we should feel that. We say that that same thing is as far as death, which comes through the sin of Eitzadas. Here we're talking about to turn around the sin of Eitzadas. Now we're talking about death, which was caused by the Chet Eitzadas. In the future to come, it will be turned, it will be death, it will be Tchias HaMeisim, Kavur become a Mekoimus. As explained in many places, the Inyan Tchias HaMeisim, the idea of Tchias HaMeis Yechai, the Meis will be alive. So, so this is the Ishapcha, to turn around. The correction of the diminishing of the sun, the Shvidas HaKelim, and the breaking of the vessels, which were all results, all level of negativity of Adlet Tzimtzum Arisha until also the first Tzimtzum. Shat Tzimtzum Lo Yastin will be turned around, that the Tzimtzum will no longer block. It will be no more hidden. That is the Ishapcha. Death will be turned to life, and the Reach will get back its shine, and the Shvidas HaKelim will be fixed. That the Tzimtzum will no longer block. The Seder Mizu, Shat Tzimtzum Atzma Yoyer. The Tzimtzum itself will show. So once everything is turned around, so then our physical world will become a vessel for godliness. As the Pasuk says, the glory of Hashem will be revealed, and all flesh together will see that it is Hashem's mouth that spoke. That also the physical flesh will become a vessel for the revelation. Hey, legilui, as a kvoid habaya. So both to the level of kvoid habaya, which is makif, vein legilui, the pi habaya, which is pnimi, the level of makif and the level of pnimi. And that's the two ideas, kvoid habaya and pi habaya. That then will turn around and be all a vessel for all the levels of Makiv and Pnimi. That the world to come has no eating and no drinking. What is Achila and Shtia? Two things. Even though here Olam Haba refers to the time of resurrection, when the Tchias HaMeisim, when the Neshamas will be bodies, And they're not going to need to eat and drink. Why? Because the physical body will be nourished from the Rosh Ray of the Shekhinah. So that means that there will be no more blockage. You don't need food to sustain. You sustain from Ziva Shekhinah. The Seder is not only will the goof get from spirituality, the goof will actually be higher than the Neshama. The future to come, the body will be higher than the soul. That's why the soul will be nourished from the body. So that means that the goof is in a higher level. So first of all, the physical goof will nourish from the ziva shechina. That's why it won't have to eat or drink. And not only that, but it'll actually provide food for the soul. The soul will get from the body. This is all accomplished through our work, our actions, and our work now. Especially through the service of tshuva. The Torah promised that Seif Yisrael lasis tshuva, b'seif galusam, that in the end, the Yidden at the end of Golus are going to do tshuva. And immediately they will be redeemed as soon as they do tshuva. In the true and complete redemption, Mashiach tzidkenu, through the righteous Mashiach. The Ma'inyonim, one of the ideas that will come about novel in the time of Mashiach is Shemashiach osi la'asova tzadikayu b'tiyufto. He's going to bring the tzaddikim to the level of tshuva. Here we're talking about the whole mile of tshuva, the ishapcha and iskafia, and the way it turns everything around to the highest level. That's actually going to be one of the inyanim that Mashiach is going to do. He's going to bring the tzaddikim to the level of teshuva, to that high level. Offer to wake up and sing those who rest in the dust. Ubal ha'ilula, the Bal ha'ilula from Yishvat, the Friedrich B'Seichon. V'yelechenu k'memius la'artzenu b'kor of mamash, and he will lead us upright to our land, b'kor of mamash. So the Rebbe explained over here, we learned today, that the revelations in the world come mitzad the level of his hapcha. And the Rebbe explained that not only does his hapcha, the level of tachtonim, his hapcha, provide for the gilui oir to come down in a pneumius, but it actually reaches into the level of a higher oir, in the level of atzmus, and that allows for the tzimtzum and all the things to turn around, because oir is b'shabbat, oir v'choshech, and everything is turned around. And the Rebbe explains how mostly this is with relationship to Baal Tshuva, because the Rebbe explains that's why the world now, that the Hamshocha that we bring down after the Eitz Hadas and the 7 Averos that the Shekhinah left after the Yerida, we are like a Baal Tshuva, and therefore in a Baal Tshuva, these level of Iskafia, Ishapcha, are on a much higher level than it was before, and that's why Dafke now we have that level. Rabbi explained in Avodas Hashem all the inyonim. It's a long, detailed mimer, but says the Rebbe writes, when you learn Chassidus, you have to, first time, like everything else, first you have to learn and get the general picture. And once you get the general picture, then you can go into the details. So This learning sort of is like the general picture to get the first time review. But one time you have the first time review, then you have to go in and learn and all in details. So we'll leave that for another time. And in mitzvah, we'll mamshich to the next mimer.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a great day and
You too.
see you later.
Bye-bye.